California has finally gotten rid of most of its forced face diapering. Took you long enough. And they say we're backward in Tennessee, where we've been breathing air unabridged for at least 2 whole years now. The show starts now. Folks, California has finally gotten the memo. COVID is over. The memo was apparently sent via Pony Express and has been en route for literal years now, but better late than never, I guess. The state has, alas, rolled back its mask mandate for what libs deem high-risk indoor settings, such as hospitals, medical care offices, long-term care, correctional facilities, homeless shelters, emergency evacuation centers, and places designated for cooling and warming stations, whatever the hell that is. They will all be face diaper optional. So we know what that means. Most liberals are still going to wear their precious face masks alone in their cars, but whatever, to each their own. In addition to the great unmasking, starting April 3rd, healthcare workers will no longer be forced to get the worthless and ineffective COVID jab. Again, glad the most progressive state in the nation is still living like it's 2020. But Californians aren't alone in their backwardness. The ladies of The View are finally allowing their audience members to breathe and show their faces. And I guess for them, this is a whole new world.
Look at y'all sitting up here with no masks on.
I know. Yeah. Nice to see that. It's a first day.
Wait a minute now.
Yeah, it's important to note the ladies of The View haven't worn masks during the show in years, but have forced their audience members to. And I would say I feel badly for those audience members, but they've already made the decision to go to a taping of The View, so chances are they didn't mind the mask or the shrill and brain-melting torture of listening to those hacks live and in person. But folks, you know it's bad when California and even the ladies of The View are more reasonable than the idiots that run DHS, as they still will not allow the #1 tennis player in the world, unvaccinated Novak Djokovic, to enter and play tennis in the USA. Yes, the supposedly freest nation on earth, the beacon of liberty that we used to be, the United States of America, still bans non-permanent residents if they haven't been vaccinated with the experimental #DiedSuddenly vaccine. What a Djokovic. But up next, First Lady Jill Biden is perplexed as to why anyone would want her husband and our president to undergo a mental competency test. Well, Jill, we could give you some reasons and examples, but this show isn't long enough. Former Trump Press Secretary Sean Spicer is on deck to discuss that and so much more. Next.
Nikki Haley, one of the Republican candidates, is calling for mental competency tests for those politicians over the age of 75. What do you think about that?
Ridiculous.
Would your husband ever take one of those?
I mean, we would never even discuss something like that.
Well, of course, you would never want Joe taking a mental competency test. It would turn out very badly, and then power-hungry Jill would be at risk of the whole weekend at Bernie charade falling apart, as obvious as it already is. But Joe isn't the only one that should be forced to take a competency test. Quite frankly, I find it completely inappropriate that not one but 2 Democrat senators are out of the office due to their own age and mental issues. If you cannot serve or be physically present in Congress, you should give up your seat. And that goes for politicians on both sides of the aisle. No more of this taking the seat to the grave, egotistical mumbo jumbo. But I digress, and I will defer to my next guest for comment on that and more. Joining me now is host of Newsmax's SpicerAndCo and author of The Parrots Go Bananas, Sean Spicer. Sean, it's great to have you.
Good to see you, Tommy.
So I want to start with that just real quickly, as we're already gearing up for 2024. It's basically on our doorstep at this point, thank God. But what do you think about this whole issue of Joe Biden running again in 24 and not going to take a mental competency test, and Jill just continuing to be his cheerleader because she just wants to be empowered that badly?
Well, look, I think that the American people, look, this is a guy who fell up the stairs multiple times last week. I don't need to see a competency test. I see it every day. He stumbles through sentences. He stumbles upstairs to Air Force One. I don't know that I need a test to tell me what I see with my own eyes every day. I don't think the American people need to see that as well. I think if you can't see with your own eyes what's going on in the economy, you can't see with your own eyes what's happening in terms of foreign policy, then you need to have the competency test taken. The American people are the ones who need to check their self when they're going to vote. If you think that this is what you want for America, then I think then you, the voter, have the bigger problem here, because Joe Biden has given you all the evidence that you need to show you that he is not capable of performing the duties of President of the United States.
Well, speaking of seeing it with our own eyes and the smoke and the mirrors, the liberal media parades in front of our very eyes, you know, we got a bombshell this week, the January 6th, the real tapes. All right, Tucker Carlson was kind enough to expose that for us. And although I've always said that was a horrible day, whether it was Trump supporters or antagonists, I don't know. We'll never probably know because that January 6th committee was a total farce. But what we saw, that footage of the officers essentially walking these people through, it seemed actually very calm in most situations from the footage that we were shown. Completely different animal than what the January 6th committee, Joe Biden, and the liberal media have been feeding us for years now. What did you think when you saw that footage?
I've seen a couple of clips online in the past, since last night when they came out, I guess. I think that what it shows is that there's a lot more to just one side of a story. As you said, I agree with the first part of what you said. Look, I think anytime that somebody breaks through the window of a federal building, you should know that that's wrong, right? There's no rhyme or reason that ever justifies saying, I thought I was supposed to go through the window of the U.S. Capitol. There is no, we are, and as a conservative, as a Republican, as a law and order person, I've never justified violence of any sort, never mind against a law enforcement agent. There's video showing that. Now, does that mean that all of those people did that? Absolutely not. And what I think the tapes that we have seen that Tucker started to show last night is that there's just more to the story. And what I think the point that you are bringing up is that the January 6th Commission, and it's no surprise because of how it was constituted, was a very myopic view of what happened that day. And I think that what was sad about how it manifested itself is that the American people didn't not only get a full view of what happened, but that we really didn't do anything to prevent something like that from happening again, especially in terms of the security failures that occurred. And that's what I think the real failure was of that committee, is that it really just became an attempt to get Trump and to show everything in the most negative light, as opposed to what were the real failures that occurred? How do we present that again? How do we reinforce the security at the Capitol and make sure that law enforcement has the reinforcements and the resources that they need going forward?
Yeah, I certainly agree with you. And again, that day was disgusting. It does not represent Trump supporters. I don't believe it represents Donald Trump in any way, shape, or form. It was completely inappropriate and disgusting. However, this is an ongoing theme now of us feeling like we're being lied to. It's like that we're not getting the full truth on the January 6th committee, which we paid for. They're sitting in Congress. They're getting our tax dollars to be there. They're wasting our time and energy and resources. And then you see the problems with the FBI, the DOJ, the Hunter Biden laptop, the Twitter files, the COVID misinformation. I mean, it's just piling up. It's like we're being lied to and lied to and lied to. And a lot of Americans are really, really frustrated, as they should be. And I know that you were just at CPAC. So what was the overall tone of the folks at CPAC? Is it still a Trump crowd? Is it a shifting crowd? Is it half establishment? What did you see there?
So first of all, let me just, there's a poll out this morning, 74% of Americans don't have confidence in the CDC. That's sad. I mean, this goes to your previous point. The idea that we get medical information from our government and we have to question it. I've always thought that was the gold standard growing up. The CDC said, take 2 aspirin, you're good. Take a warm compress, put it on your head, whatever it was. You thought, okay, these are the smart people. These are the people who are going to keep me safe. And now you have to question it. And even more so after what happened with COVID, because we were told, all of these people who questioned. And it wasn't even that they knew better. It's just they said, hey, this doesn't make sense. Shouldn't I get a second opinion? Something that we were grown up taught that, hey, question this, get a second opinion, make sure all of that went out the window. And that's, I digress, but I will just say that you hit on something that's really important, because the loss of trust in these institutions is horrible for democracy. It's horrible for our country. I've been going to CPAC for over 25 years. I will say this, it has definitely become more Trump, but I don't know that that's not that wasn't not to be expected, right? Trump was the sitting president, 2 years ago. Over the last 5-6 years, both in terms of his candidacy and then in terms of his presidency, that this is what people knew. Now, did Nikki Haley have an opportunity to come in and speak? And Mike Pompeo, and I was there last year too. They got warm welcomes. But again, I got to say, this is like any other deal in politics. If you really want to get your people there, then get them there. And I think that the Trump team did an amazing job getting their folks there. But there's a lot of folks that were in talk radio. CPAC has evolved over the last 10 years. The amount of media that is there dedicated to getting out conservative voices and conservative principles and ideas has just quadrupled exponentially over the last decade. And I'm just so proud to walk down and watch these people who, whether it's just radio folks or podcasts or people who have set up a channel on YouTube or Rumble. It's amazing as a conservative. It warms my heart because when I first started going there, we were trying to convince the Washington Post or CBS or whomever to cover us. Now it's like, hey, get out of the way, guys. We've got people to talk to, and you're getting in our way. Right. It was exciting to see that. But more than anything, to your point about the mood, people were excited. People wanted to talk about 2024. They wanted to talk about how we implement a lot of victories. A lot of the members of Congress were talking about some of the things that they were doing and the rest of the agenda. I was fired up. I moderated a panel on ESG and some of the things that are going on in both the private sector and in the state level to combat this woke agenda. So I thought the mood was great. Did Trump dominate it? Absolutely. But I just don't know that's that's news to anybody.
Right. Well, it's not. I mean, CPAC, ever since Donald Trump announced his candidacy, even really before that, Trump has been a star at CPAC. We know this. And we know, they make a joke about it, but when you have really great merchandise, as he does, with the Make America Great Again, everybody's wearing those hats. It's very visible to see who is a Trump supporter. I was surprised somewhat that Ron DeSantis chose not to be there this year, but I think that was a very strategic move. I want to talk to you about that because this is something that I'm a little concerned about, Sean. I got to be honest with you, because over the weekend as well, you had some disgruntled Trump supporters, a very small group, protesting outside of Ron DeSantis book events, being very loud, very unwelcoming, chanting, heckling DeSantis supporters. I look back at that and I say, DeSantis supporters and Trump supporters are the same people. We're the same people. And so I already see this battle for the hardcore Trump supporters that they are going to go after their friends, their allies. And they're working really hard to make Ron DeSantis seem establishment, which we all know he is not. So I wonder what your prediction is for how this is going to go down. Should we get an announcement from Ron DeSantis?
So two things. One, look, Trump has run twice before. He has more political data on every voter in America than any candidate running, including Joe Biden. He is running for renomination for the third time. And politically speaking, this is and this is no slight against any candidate, but he has an advantage data-wise and infrastructure-wise that no candidate has ever had in history. So you can't underestimate what an advantage that is for him going into this primary season. Ron DeSantis, Mike Pompeo, Mike Pence, Joe Biden, nobody has this on either side. So he has this distinct advantage of understanding the playing field and having the data and the funding that nobody else possibly can compete with. So that's now it's his to lose, but he is, by all intents and purposes, the 800-pound gorilla. It is his nomination to lose. Here's the deal with DeSantis, and this goes back to your question about his CPAC deal. There's currently a resign to run law in Florida. Today, DeSantis gave the state of the state address in Florida. 60 days from now, the legislature will dissolve. My guess is that a day or two before that happens, you will see a bill introduced or moved quickly that will change that and allow him to seek the presidency. But prior to that, he's not going to make any moves that would take away from him being able to, quote, do his job and take away from the focus. He wants to put points on the board. He's got a lot of things that he wants to get done in the legislative session down in Tallahassee that are great for conservatives. And this speaks to your point. He's got a lot of great things that are pro-Second Amendment. He's got a lot of great things that are protecting life. He's got a lot of great things that are pro-parent, all part of that legislative agenda in Tallahassee. that I think will help him should he choose to do this. I'm with you on this. Look, we're all on the same team. Primaries are good. They will make Donald Trump a stronger candidate. They will get him back in shape, if you will, politically speaking. And at the end of the day, we're all on the same team. It's Ron DeSantis is saying, I'm basically for all the Trump policies. I have a different personality. Mike Pompeo is saying, I support all these Trump policies. I have a little bit of a different personality. Nikki Haley saying, so we're all going to get the same thing, and that's a great thing. I'm a pro primary guy. Look, Donald Trump went through a very competitive primary. He was very successful. Joe Biden went through a competitive primary, and he was successful. Bill Clinton went through one. George W. Bush went through one. So primaries are good things. There's nothing to be worried about, folks. We're going to do great, and we'll win.
I agree with you. I would just hope that the Trump supporters out there remember that let the best man or woman win, and understand that it's also about electability, because you're right. Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump are going to have very similar policies, if not the same policies, if they were to be president. Now, we got to figure out who's going to be able to win, which is what I said the other night on Hannity. I said, listen, Donald Trump doesn't need to convince us he would be a great president with a lot of great ideas. He needs to convince us that he can win, because we cannot throw this election down the toilet. And a lot of us are very concerned with all the baggage that he has, that he's been accumulating, not through a fault of his own, in large part, that he can win again. But I do want to talk about.
Look, I got to be honest.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I just got to say this. I say this look, choose who you want in the primary, vote whom you want. But I will tell you this: there's nobody seeking the Republican nomination, including Donald Trump, that cannot beat Joe Biden. So rest easy, my friends. I'm not kidding. And there is nobody. Trump actually is the only one in current polls that actually does beat Biden. But I don't really care who it is. Should you choose to nominate me, and I'm not running, nor will I accept the nomination, but I could beat Joe Biden. Tommy, you could beat Joe Biden. This cup could beat Joe Biden. This is not going to be a tough thing. People in America are having buyer's remorse every day, more and more. So I feel very good about where we are.
I do too, but I will say this. When the Democrats have the voting machine that they have, and when I mean machine, I mean their operation, what they have been able to do with elections, they have outplayed us. So that is my concern. Yes. We could have a perfect candidate with no baggage, but if we don't learn how to do what the left does with the early voting and the ballot harvesting where it's legal, we are going to lose anyway. But I want to talk about your book, because we're trying to take this message to the young people. Parents go bananas. Tell my viewers what their children can expect from your book.
So I've written 3 serious books. This was one that I actually got to write with my 2 12-year-old kids. It's called The Parents Go Bananas, as you said. It's from Brave Books. Julie Banderas there at Fox, she just wrote one. Brave Books does a series of pro-Christian, pro-patriotic books. My book, The Parents Go Bananas, it's about the dangers of fake news. I don't say the word fake news. I talk about what it's like. I mean, think Nick Sandman. Think of 2 characters in this book that get accused. They're playing. You can see the beautiful illustration there. They're playing this game of the equivalent of baseball, and it's called Mushroom Village. They get accused of cheating. The kids pile on and say, "Oh my God, I can't believe it." They obviously, I'm not going to ruin anything here, but they do get vindicated. And we try to teach kids about what it's like to not jump on the bandwagon and presume somebody's guilty just because they were accused of it. And that's basically what happens with fake news. We saw this with Andrew Mitchell lying about Ron DeSantis' record the other day with that AP course. We've seen it with COVID. You and I just spoke about that over and over again. We saw it with Nick Salmon. I've been a victim of this myself. You have, where people sort of impugn motives on something that you've said, and slowly the truth comes out, and everyone goes, 2 months later, in the case of COVID, 2 years later, it's, oops, that's not true, and sorry that we called you a purveyor of misinformation, a conspiracy theorist. So the cool part about Brave Books is that we can teach kids, in this case 4 to 12 years old, a great lesson. The best part is if you go to bravebooks.com, if you buy my book right now, it's $1, and you can sign up for the subscription to get all of these books once a month. So it's a fun book. There's lessons in the back for parents who want to do something and teach the kids a lesson. But again, I don't say the word fake news or talk about the media. I know it's for 4 to 12-year-olds. But if there's a reporter in your family that works for CNN or the Washington Post, you can buy it, and they could definitely still learn from it. because I understand that you're never too old to understand the dangers of fake news.
And I'm guessing that drag queens will not be reading your book at story hours. Would I be correct to assume that, Sean?
100%.
All right. Well, hey, there we go. Congratulations on the new book and everything that you've done. And thank you for spending so much time with me today. And I hope everyone will check out Brave Books because, we always say that we want to be on a level playing field with the left and their propaganda and their machine. Well, sometimes you just got to compete with them. So that's fantastic that you're doing that and setting a great example. Sean, I hope to see you very soon. And 2024 is right on our doorstep, so I hope to have you back.
That's
and
right.
We'll talk about it when we get a DeSantis announcement because things are going to get very interesting.
That's right. By the way, second week of May, you can count on it. Always good to see you, Tommy. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Sean. Up next, Tennesseans are putting our foot down. No more grown-ass men in high heels stripping and dancing for children. Apparently, the liberals find that to be an infringement on their freakery. Robby Stabuck is here next to break it down.
You are such an awesome mom for bringing their kid out to a family-friendly drag show, ladies and gentlemen.
So the great state of Tennessee has taken the completely necessary and decent step of banning cross-dressing grown men from performing simulated sex acts in front of children. If you're wondering why the left could possibly be upset about that, well, that makes three of us. Joining me now is the man who has fought tooth and nail to get this legislation to the finish line, political activist Robby Stabuck. So my audience has now seen that clip numerous times. I'm sure you've seen it hundreds of times, unfortunately. But the fact that the left wants children to be exposed to that, I think it's really a sign of where we are with the modern day Democrat Party. But I know that you've been fighting for this legislation. It's finally crossed the finish line. The country is upset about it, or at least the liberals are upset about it. What has the reaction been to you in all of the interviews that you've done and all of the questions you've taken on this?
Well, what's interesting with the interviews is that every mainstream media reporter who has come and reached out to me, I've had the same response to them. I said, I'll give you as much time as you want. I'll sit down with you. I'll answer all your questions. But on one condition, you have to say that you will put either a screenshot or a video of one of these sexually explicit shows so that your readers have that context of why we went after getting this law passed, okay? Because it doesn't have to do with the fact that these are grown men dressing up as women, which I may find creepy on a personal level, but that's not illegal, okay? What bothers me is that they're doing this with children, and it's the sexualization of children. And if they're not willing to let their readers know that, we have a serious problem. But like you said, I think that the left is mad about this, yes, but on a country level, I think the country agrees with this. Right. On a broad level, I haven't run into anybody, normal people, that is upset about this. The only thing I've seen is some people be confused, thinking that we ban drag in total. And that's a product of the media helping the left push this narrative that we went and did something we didn't do.
But I want to also go into that. That is just so lazy.
Yeah.
For people to be outraged about something, if you want to be outraged about a new law and don't even bother to read the new law, and I'm not talking about reading in its entirety. I mean, you just skim it. Just skim it and you would know that it's in front of children. I read it the other day on the show when I did my final thoughts for it. It explicitly says near schools in front of children. It has nothing to do with banning drag. And I actually put in my final thoughts as well, because we're here in Nashville. We know that this is a blue city. We know it's a very artsy city. They had an Instagram page that I follow because it's got food and entertainment advice on it for Nashville. It's called Do 615. And they had slides on there about how to contact the ACLU if you're going to lose your job, hotlines to call if this is going to cause you stress, pain, and anxiety. I mean, what does that say? Forget the rest of the country. What does that say about Nashville, that there are Nashvillians, our fellow Nashvillians, who are so distraught that they can't perform simulated sex acts, sexy dance in front of kids?
I mean, it's lunacy. There's no other way to describe it. The idea that there's people out there, as upset as they are, that you can no longer go and spread your legs in front of children in Tennessee and show them your genitals is really like, I mean, it's mind-blowing. It really, and it should be to everybody. It's ludicrous. And I don't know if it's the gross distortion of it that the media has facilitated by these left-wing activists who really do want to do this, but the idea that there's even an industry for this, there's some industry where people have jobs to go do this in front of children is, again, mind-blowing. You know, I think we've got to get to a place where we can at least agree on the facts. You know, you talked about the bill. Everyone should read it. It is the most readable bill of all time. It is literally not even a full page. Okay, if you can't read that bill, you shouldn't be doing anything in politics. Okay, you shouldn't have any activism, nothing. You should keep your mouth shut if you can't read this bill. It is very short, it's explicitly clear, and it's simply about the sexualization of children. And you know what I don't hear any of them talking about? Is the fact that it never says the word drag in it. It talks about the types of performers, which includes people who impersonate women, but it also includes everyone else. You can't strip in front of children. You know, like you and I right now, if we had children in the room, we can't do some sexy show for the kids.
Right.
That's already something that everybody understood. This is just simply making sure the law fits the reality we're sadly living in.
And it's unfortunate that we have to have a law like this. It's unfortunate we have to say, hey, you can't sexy dance in front of kids.
Yep.
But here we are. This is 2023. It's the process of grooming. But I posted my thoughts on this the other day, and of course, I've got a lot of people that agree, but you have a few people, even that agree with it, that say, listen, a law is fine, but what do you do about the moms and dads and the aunts and the uncles and the guardians that were willfully taking their children to these drag shows? They wanted these kids to be here. These kids weren't exposed to this by anything other than their parents bringing them there. What do we do? Is there anything that we can do about that? And what does that say about the state of parenthood today?
Wow, that's a loaded question because there's a lot there. Okay, number one, I hold the parents just as responsible as the performers in almost every case. The one caveat I could maybe give it is if a parent didn't understand it was going to be a sexual show, they don't know much about this, and they see it's some kind of brunch and it says all ages and a friend invites them and they go to it and then they're shocked to find out it's a sexual show where some grown man is spreading their legs to their child. I could conceive that maybe that could be possible, but the performers are really where we can stop this, and that's what the law does, is it simply says, look, if you do this, and if you do it twice, especially, it turns into a very serious felony. It's a misdemeanor the first time, felony second time, and that stops there from ever being the chance of a parent bringing a child to one of these events. And so that was really my concern with this, is how do we prevent this from happening? Now, in terms of culpability legally for the parents, that's not in the bill. However, me personally, if I was in control of, you know, a magic wand that could say, hey, what are we going to do? I would say there should be consequences for adults who bring their kids to these types of things. I think that it's something that, again, you talk about the state of parenting in our country. It shows that some people are valuing their own sort of important, and you see this with the transgender thing, where there's moms who see their own popularity as more important than the well-being of their child. And that's disgusting to me. You know, you've really got to start to piece apart what has happened in a society where parents are valuing that over their children.
And I feel like a lot of this argument, and the reason we're having it, the reason this is happening is because there are so many in this community. I call them the Rainbow Mafia, because there is the LGBTQ movement, there's that, and then there's the Rainbow Mafia sect of that movement that wants to force this down people's throats, and they feel, to me, that they need to do these kind of things to make it more normalized, make that lifestyle more normalized, and they want to bring it all in together to this homophobia. If you don't like this, you're transphobic, you're homophobic, that somehow this, performing in front of children, is the same thing as being homophobic or transphobic. The two have nothing to do with one another, but I feel like this is their message and this is the hill they want to die on, and they're using the LGBT movement to really shield themselves from the true perversion that they want here.
That's absolutely what's going on. I mean, they ignore the fact that gay and lesbian people and transgender people showed up in opposition to their side. They showed up to support this bill. There are plenty of people who fall under, you know, whatever identity group they're choosing to fall under, who don't believe it's okay to sexualize children. And, you know, it kind of says something about those people you're talking about, that when you talk about the sexualization of children, or if you do a broad bill like we did this time that says you simply cannot sexualize kids, whether you're gay, straight, whatever, okay, and included them in that bill, included everybody in that, they immediately attached it as an attack on all gay people. That says something about their train of thought, that they hear child sexualization and they say, oh, that's an attack on gay people. That's not something I said.
Right.
That's something they're attaching to it. And I think they should be very careful about that, frankly, because they're doing away with a lot of goodwill that people had built up to just say, hey, live your life. And I think that's not a very wise decision on their part.
Well, that's the thing, too, because I was one of those people that was on this, the gay issue, maybe more socially liberal in those areas. Like, I don't really care about same-sex marriage. That stuff doesn't really bother me. It's not the hill I'm going to die on as a conservative, right? But there were so many conservatives 5-10 years ago that said, hey, listen, there's going to be a snowball effect here.
Yep.
You start along one thing, and then they're going to start doing this and this and this. And a lot of us on the more socially liberal conservative side said, that's ridiculous.
Yep.
And here it is. And
Here
it just
we
keeps
are.
getting pushed further and further and further. And you're right. We don't care what you do. We don't care what you identify as. Don't shove it down our throats, and do not put it in front of children. And they're going to use this, by the way, because I think that there's two very strong lobbies in this country. Well, there's three. There's BLM, there's Big Green, the climate change, and then the Rainbow Mafia. And they are going to use this in 2024. Donald Trump has already said he's going to ban all this stuff, the castration, the mutilation. He already said this. But Ron DeSantis in Florida, again, mischaracterizing his don't say gay, which actually frustrates me because we have to call it that to even refer to it so people know what we're talking about.
This is why we have to name our own bills, by the way.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. But how problematic do you think that is going to be for Ron DeSantis should he announce a run for president?
Not at all. I think it's where do I donate to get them to do this and make this an issue for 2024?
For you, though, but what about independents? Now, I'm with you. I think that this is very popular. But again, there's a lot of lazy and ill-informed people out there who do believe that he is trying to rid gay from the curriculum.
So there's a poll out this morning. I'll send it to you. It's from a very middle ground pollster, okay? They're not a left or right-wing group. They did this poll. They asked about feelings when it came to having children at these shows. They asked about, the feelings on transgender treatments for children. And they found a wild majority of Americans oppose these things. And then when you talked about teaching sexual subjects at school, you found something around, it was like in the 30s or 40s, believed that you should be teaching this at all, and the rest pretty much said, hey, you should leave this to parents. Okay, so the vast majority, even in those independent groups, are falling into a camp of saying, we're not comfortable with this. And I think when you attach the national stage to whether it be Trump or DeSantis and the ability to just go out there and have the discussion and say, look, nobody's trying to stop people from being gay. I don't care if you're gay. And you can make that, Trump did a good job with it in 2016 by bringing on Rick Grinnell and some other people to make it very clear that, like, look, there's going to be no discrimination against people for what they choose to do in their private life. And Rick's a great guy. He's a friend of mine. I think those things you can overcome really easily, but making the issue a voting issue in 2024 is going to come back to bite them, because normal people, they don't agree with this, including some Democrats. A large chunk of them don't agree with this stuff.
Well, that's good to hear, and I'm glad that people are understanding this. I think you're right, though. This all goes back to a problem that the GOP has had and will continue to have, is our messaging. We do not get out ahead of these things. We allow them to set the narrative, and then we spend all of our time defending. We are always reacting. We do something that's great, that most Americans would support, and then we have to react to all the BS they put out there because for some reasons we're really not able to get our side out like the other side is. But we still need to take some onus on this and do better at messaging.
Oh, yeah.
The other part of this, too, is, I think, even more serious. It's the gender transition for children, the chemical castration, the mutilation of children. There are other states that are following leads on this. We got 43 to go, but Mississippi recently as well. Do you think that we can get all states outside of New York and California to jump onto this and say, hey, listen, this is too far for us? Or do you think that the other states are always going to maintain this as a way to be like pro-gender affirmation or whatever they think they're doing?
Truthfully, so I've been talking to legislators in many states, and there's a lot of states that are introducing bills very similar to the one we got passed here in Tennessee and is going to become law. It's technically not active yet, but it's been signed into law. There's a lot of states that are going to follow our lead here, okay? And it's pretty much red states. And what I see in purple states is maybe a willingness to ban the surgeries, but not the hormones and the puberty blockers. And then you get to the blue states, they won't ban any, they'll ban you as a parent, basically, if you refuse to transition your child. So it's like a wildly different universe in these places, okay? So I think realistically, if you look at these hyper blue states, they're not going to do anything. Even places like Michigan, where there's just too many Democrats in power, the legislature might be able to get something done, but the governor will never agree to it and will veto anything they do. So I think it's really going to come down to sane red states, purple states doing somewhat better than the blue states are going to do, and then the blue states are just going to allow total hedonism and encourage it.
Last thing I want to ask you, because I think this is also going to be very interesting. When you look at some of those swing states, especially in the South, areas that people like Joe Biden really want to win, like South Carolina, and other areas that have always been reliably conservative, Georgia, but now clearly have changed a little bit. I wonder, because if we look at minority voting groups, they are traditionally conservative, and they might consider themselves Democrats, but socially they are more conservative. And I wonder if this could actually be an issue that we could use to reach out to those communities and say, we know you weren't raised like this. Could this be a moment for us to reach across and bring people into the fold with something as simple as protect the children?
That's why I hope the Democrats are dumb enough to make this an issue for 2024, because the answer is absolutely. And we saw this already in the Latino community. Myself being Cuban, I knew as a child, I was friends with many different Hispanics from different backgrounds. And the one commonality we all had was the family values, faith, and a belief that, the family and those values, they matter more than anything else. And so when we took these issues in 2020 and 2022 to Latino communities, you just saw more and more of them voting Republican. So in the Black community, I think we need to do the same thing with this specific issue, because just like the Latino community, Black communities don't want somebody coming into their school and secretly talking their kid into a gender transition that they do without the parents knowing, because that's what's happening in many of these states. They actually have rules on the books where the teachers hide it from the parents, and the parents only find out once their kid becomes suicidal or, God forbid, something else happens. And, that's something that in each one of those communities, they understand they don't want that happening to their kid. And if one side is pushing it and the other side is against it and will stand up for your child, that means something.
I agree with you. And I think we are really smart to lean into this. Normally I say we should stay out of the social issues. We should focus on our fiscal issues. But this is an area, especially now, hopefully we're done with the masking and the vaxxing and all this. But this and that are two areas I think we could really win on. And I think Virginia is a great example of the other. I think we can really win on this. So as much as I hope that these Democrats come to their senses, if they want to go there, they want to play ball, I think that they're playing a very dangerous game.
Yeah, batter up. We're ready for it.
We are definitely ready. Robby, thank you for everything that you've done in Tennessee and in other states and working so hard to get this passed. I know that it's been a passion of yours, and it's been a great success for this state. So onward to others, and hopefully we can continue to just protect children, and that shouldn't be controversial. But if it is, call us controversial, I suppose.
Thank you, and thank you for covering it, because so many are refusing to do it.
And I'm sorry that you have to watch those videos so many times.
Me too.
For explanation purposes.
I can't wait until I don't have to ever again.
Yes.
I mean, it's honestly some of the stuff that we're sent, I'm just like, I can't wait for the day that this ends.
Well, it's coming very soon. Robby, thank you as always, and we'll talk to you really soon. All right, still ahead, a Walmart has been forced to close its doors thanks to lawless thugs shoplifting for what I'm sure is justice, and I have some final thoughts. All Walmart stores in the liberal hellhole of Portland are closing permanently, thanks in part to out-of-control shoplifting theft. And I've got some final thoughts powered by 4 Patriots. Yep, the last 2 holdout Walmart stores in the Antifa stronghold of Portland are closing their doors, which means that city will have 0 Walmart locations. The company says this is due to poor financial showing, but just a few months back, their CEO sang a different tune, saying that theft will force stores to push prices higher or close altogether if something isn't done to control the massive theft issue. And guess what? Boom, it happened. Nearly 600 employees in Portland and the surrounding area will now be jobless, all because thugs in this country, and particularly in Dem-run hellscapes like Portland, know they can steal and take and face little to no consequences. They've been trained to believe taking things you didn't pay for or that don't belong to you is a form of justice or reparation. So it's no damn wonder how we got here. And if Walmart, one of the largest corporations in the world, is feeling the sting of mass theft, can you imagine what smaller stores, businesses, and convenience stores go through when crap like this happens day in and day out? And it's not just the material loss either. Shoppers who are there to actually obey the civil code and buy their items are scared crapless to go into these stores for fear they'll get caught up in the mayhem or even catch a damn elbow or worse. And do you think any of the people involved in this ratchet melee get charged or punished? I'm going to go with no. Democrats have had to answer somewhat for violent crime, like old Beetlejuice bug in Chicago, but by and large, no Democrat politicians have had to answer for retail theft and crime. But Democrats will never acknowledge shoplifting as a crime, and why? Because they can't blame guns or climate change or any of their usual BS scapegoats. They can only blame themselves and their thug-ass constituents. You know, it's a crying shame people can't even go to a damn Walmart to save a little money and shop for less. You know, when I was growing up, the worst thing you'd see at Walmart was maybe a butt crack or an exposed beer gut. But this is a whole new can of worms. And now that Target has gone all woke ass with chest binders and BLM paraphernalia, well, I guess we'll all just have to Instacart or DoorDash and live on a prayer. I don't recognize my country anymore. I really don't. Those are my final thoughts. Be sure to watch exclusive content and the full show at OutKick.com. From Nashville, God bless and take care.